The Yavnomen were a group of nomadic peoples who lived in the western desertlands. Their origins are shrouded in mystery and myth, with beliefs suggesting that they emerged at around 4000 of the First Era. However, concrete details about their history is practically non-existent for the First Era. The first recorded mention of the Yavnomen appears much later in the Second Era. In 694 of the Second Era, the historian Sassyrus documented the Yavnomen, primarily due to the marriage of the emperor at the time, Yargad IV, to the Nakarthan empress Himania, who was likely of Yavnomen descent. Sassyrus noted that the Yavnomen referred to themselves as the Yavnishi. This name, combined with the Nakarthan term of nomen, which they used to describe anyone from the desertlands, which formed the name of Yavnomen. By the beginning of the Third Era, the Yavnomen began to experience a series of critical issues. They faced many raids from the Golden Empire to the south and the Marthiric kingdoms of the north. Additionally, the major weather changes that had been going on since the late Second Era had been causing severe droughts, which led to an overall lack of resources, most importantly water. These factors collectively forced the Yavnomen to begin a massive migration eastwards. Whilst small migrations may have started as early as the 1000s of the Second Era, it was at the beginning of the Third Era that the mass migrations began in their earnest. This significant movement brought the Yavnomen into contact with the Narakunan Empire in around 50 of the Third Era. Initially, the Yavnomen would raid Narakunan territories, but soon began to settle there whilst doing more raids. By 80 of the Third Era, the Narakunan Emperor Vashchilachich granted the Yavnomen territory in the north in exchange for their cavalry services on the battlefield. This alliance proved vital as the Narakunan Empire faced a series of ongoing conflicts with their eastern rival, the Haxonian Empire, who had been attacking them for much of this time. The Yavnomen cavalry played a crucial role in several wars, helping to secure major victories for the Narakunans and turning the tide of battle against the Haxonians. However, in 118 of the Third Era, during one of these wars, the Yavnomen chief, Mashiv I, shocked the Narakunans by betraying them in battle, launching a devastating attack on their flanks that decimated their army. Seizing the momentum, Mashiv I also turned on the Haxonians, initiating a calculated conquest that would ultimately lead to the siege and brutal conquest of the Haxonian Empire's capital, Mashka. This assault, marked by bloodshed, would send shockwaves throughout Mashka, and would set the stage for Yavnomen to begin flooding into Mashka. The Yavnomen horde's aggressions also extended outside of the Narakunan and Haxonian empires. In particular, they attacked the Luvarians, a group of nomads that were somewhat similar to Yavnomen, which forced them to flee into Algamora. The Yavnomen conquest of Mashka was particularly ruthless, resulting in the slaughter of millions during Mashiv I's reign. It would lead to many cities being destroyed, rebellions would follow, and this would kill even more people. In 138, Mashiv I would die, succeeded by Mashiv II, who would orchestrate the relocation of many Yavnomen into Mashka, beginning their settlement there. However, when Mashiv II unexpectedly died in 151 of the Third Era, his death precipitated a loss of control over much of Algamor and Mashka, leaving certain areas under the rule of Yavnomen chiefs. Information about these Yavnomen chiefs is scarce at best. What is known is that the Yavnomen began to settle in northwestern Mashka, eventually heavily populating the area. During this time, in the year 195, the then 16-year-old named Kre'esh emerged as a significant figure, demonstrating a heavy ambition and military prowess. Kre'esh was able to raise an army of 120,000 and successfully defeated several Yavnomen chiefs. This early success convinced many other chiefs of his potential to unite and lead these Yavnomen people in Mashka. However, in 197, Kre'esh faced a major setback when he was defeated in battle. The details are unknown, but what is known is that he was fled south. It is here that he regrouped and would avenge his defeat at the decisive battle of Kuvuro in 198. It's here that by 202 of the Third Era, Kre'esh would have conquered all of the Yavnomen chiefs in northwestern Mashka, establishing himself as the ruler of a powerful kingdom in Mashka. Kre'esh now felt that his kingdom could be under threat from the neighboring Mashkan kingdoms, which outnumbered his army and who were sympathetic to their own people living nearby. Thus, starting in 207, he began a campaign of eastward conquest. He'd go on to successfully conquer the Haxonians, yes, them again, the Vanirians, the Bakrisovians, and many other Mashkan kingdoms. These kingdoms attempted to form an alliance to defeat Kre'esh, with the Amakuzi Empire being at the head of it, but their coalition were first defeated in the Battle of the Purush Passes and then decisively crushed at the Battle of Vemesh. Following these conquests, Kre'esh would focus on administering his expanded kingdom. He adopted many administrative traditions of the Mashkan kingdoms, aiming to integrate his new territories effectively. Kre'esh also sought to respect the non-Yavnomen populations within his kingdom, which was quite difficult understanding the history of the Yavnomen killing the locals in order to settle the area. He did this by appointing local rulers in certain regions. In addition to controlling most of Mashka, Kre'esh established a series of tributary states outside of Mashka, bringing his kingdom to the peak of its power. However, as Kre'esh attempted to complete his conquest of Mashka in 219, his army was ambushed and nearly destroyed in a mountain valley. Kre'esh managed to escape by creating a gap within the Amakuzi army, narrowly avoiding capture. Starting in 211 as well, Kre'esh would begin to suffer from numerous illnesses and would have many close calls with death. Fortunately, his sister, the famed physician Demira, was able to cure most of his diseases. Sadly, when Demira died in 225, Kre'esh's health deteriorated rapidly. He met his end in 227, likely while on an adventure, possibly fighting off several animals or monsters. His death caused a regency, as Kre'esh's only legitimate son, Both-Bashir I, was just 7 years old. Also, you're going to be seeing a lot of Both-Bashirs. Spoilers. After Kre'esh's death, the Kre'esh kingdom faced a series of significant challenges. The three main issues were the internal rebellions, the Kuran Horde, and the Mashkan kingdoms. The Kuran Horde, led by Reeve I, initially launched raids into the Kre'esh kingdom, before escalating it into a full-scale invasion. Reeve's armies occupied western Mashka, conquering the city of Kor-Harkith, which was one of the capitals of the Kre'esh kingdom, and then he nearly destroyed the Kre'esh kingdom's actual capital of Fatkirith. Fortunately, the regency managed to defeat the Kurans at the Battle of Fatkirith, forcing them to retreat. It is during this chaos that millions of Mashkans from across the kingdom would either rebel or flee eastwards, joining a united Mashkan army led by the Amakuzi Empire once again. This army began to conquer the Kre'esh kingdom's eastern lands, only being halted in the Battle of Hithir. By 233, when the 13-year-old Both-Bashir ascended to the throne, the kingdom had stabilized. Both-Bashir reigned relatively peacefully until 248, when he launched an attack against the Amakuzi Empire and the other Mashkan kingdoms. He would be killed in battle, leaving behind a succession crisis as he had no sons. His two cousins, Harthik and another Both-Bashir, fought in a civil war, which Both-Bashir won by 250, becoming Both-Bashir II. Both-Bashir II would rule briefly, but died in 252, leading to Harthik becoming Harthik I. Harthik also had a short reign, dying only 1 year later in 253. Another civil war erupted in 255 following the death of the next king, Theobashir I. This time, Both-Bashir III emerged victorious in a three-sided civil war by 259. However, Both-Bashir III's reign was cut short when he was assassinated in 262. This assassination triggered an invasion by the eastern Mashkan kingdoms, who saw the weakening state as an opening to reconquer a lot of their lands. This resulted in the Kre'esh kingdom losing most of its eastern and southern territories, which included the capital Fatkerith in 265. Despite these losses, the internal strife continued. Both-Bashir IV would seize power in 265. However, he proved to be an incompetent ruler, merely watching as the Mashkan kingdom stripped away much of his kingdom. Both-Bashir would later go on to die in 281, importantly heavily starting the mistreatment of the Mashkan people, which would lead to even more rebellions and which would help lead to its collapse eventually. After Both-Bashir IV died, Parvul I managed to succeed him, inheriting a significantly weakened kingdom. After taking over in 281, Parvul had to manage the weakened kingdom of Kre'esh. He reformed the taxation system, simplifying it significantly and raising taxes on the nobility. Through his diplomatic skills and the strategic gifting of honorary titles, Parvul prevented the nobility from revolting. However, in 287, he was incapacitated during a failed campaign in the east. This would lead to his son, who would become Kre'esh II, also known as Kre'esh Kavush, to assume the role of regent and then later to succeed his father. Kre'esh Kavush began his reign by implementing comprehensive military reforms. He increased the soldiers' pay and granted lands to veterans, ensuring their loyalty and improving overall morale. This also made sure that more people could join the army. Additionally, by recruiting many locals, Kre'esh Kavush was able to amass an army of around 3 million men by 296. With this formidable force, he launched a campaign to reconquer Mashka. This campaign would see pivotal battles such as Mashka and Viers, both of which were decisive victories for Kre'esh Kavush. These victories allowed for the Kre'esh kingdom to reconquer most of Mashka and to consolidate its power once more. However, unfortunately, Kre'esh Kavush would heavily mistreat the local population, extorting them for money, raising taxes, and overall making them angry at the Kre'esh kingdom. This would also make them secondary citizens in the kingdoms where ethnic tensions were already high. This would lead to things such as rebellions occurring, which would lead to a lot of issues. Kre'esh Kavush's reign continued until 337. Upon his death, his kingdom was divided amongst his sons to avoid a full-scale civil war. This diversion resulted in the formation of 3 separate kingdoms. The kingdom of Kre'esh in the west stayed, the kingdom of Sorobawi in the south would be formed, and the kingdom of Verzoth in the east. While it was intended for these kingdoms to remain allied against foreign threats, they were to function independently. However, in 341, the kingdom of Kre'esh under Both-Bashir V, who invaded the kingdom of Verzoth, igniting a series of conflicts. Both-Bashir V would die in 346, and Harthik II would take this opportunity to claim the Kre'esh throne, winning a civil war against Merethic by 348. Harthik II ruled for around 20 years, successfully conquering the kingdom of Verzoth in 361. Despite his successes, neither Harthik II nor any of his successors would be able to conquer the kingdom of Sorobari, which was established by Bari I. Bari I expanded his kingdom eastwards, a move that would foreshadow the future path of the Tarnivs. In 365 of the Third Era, a man named Lavuther led a rebellion against King Harthik II, hoping to usurp the throne. Despite Harthik's initial successes with quelling the rebellion, the tide turned in 368 when Harthik II was killed in battle. Lavuther seized this opportunity and ultimately emerged victorious, ending the civil war. Lavuther's reign, however, was short-lived. In 373, while dealing with another uprising, Lavuther died in uncertain circumstances, leaving the kingdom in a precarious position. His successor, Both-Bashir VI, ascended to the throne, but his reign was marked by turmoil by the start. Early in his rule, Both-Bashir launched a campaign to conquer the eastern territories. However, this ill-fated expedition would result in a severe head injury that left him mentally unstable. Both-Bashir VI became known as a mad king, displaying erratic and unpredictable behavior. He frequently mistook other men for his wife, which would lead to numerous scandals. Plagued by the visions and voices in his head, he experienced major mood swings and would often ramble on for hours. The king's madness extended to his governance, most importantly. Both-Bashir VI would enact a series of confusing and contradictory laws, plunging the kingdom into most certain uncertainty and chaos. Taking advantage of the disorder, a rebellion erupted. As garrisons were pulled from the eastern front to deal with this internal strife, the opportunistic Mashkan kingdoms once again invaded. In 381, they marched upon Fatkurith, sacking the city and killing Both-Bashir in the process. After Both-Bashir's death, the Mashkan kingdoms appeared poised to reconquer the entirety of Mashka. However, a determined general named Horeth-Bashir managed to rally the remaining soldiers and local recruits. He strategically moved westwards, using the city of Korhorhith as an impenetrable fortress. During this period, he built up a formidable army of around 2 million soldiers. In 387, Horeth-Bashir would lead his massive force eastwards, recapturing Fatkurith and driving the Mashkan forces back. Seizing this opportunity, he would extort the local populations, amassing a significant amount of wealth in order to fund a grand campaign to reconquer eastern Mashka. However, this extortion led to rebellions, which Horeth-Bashir would take several years to crush. As Horeth-Bashir advanced his armies, his ambition to reconquer Mashka was cut short by betrayal. One of his own soldiers, a local whose parents had been killed during one of Horeth-Bashir's sackings, turned against him. This treachery culminated in the Battle of Trefir in 391, which proved to be not only a bad but a catastrophic defeat for the Kre'esh kingdom. This battle marked the end of their ambitions for eastward conquest, as they never again would launch a major offensive towards the east. From 391 to 417, the Kre'esh kingdom saw a rapid succession of rulers who largely were puppets or failures. Both-Bashir VII, Kre'esh III, and Maradires were just a few of the many. During this terrible period, the non-Yavnomen populations would face brutal oppression and exploitation, which would lead to numerous revolts. Wars plagued the kingdom, and as it tore itself apart, a northern people who had once been humiliated and nearly destroyed by the Yavnomen began to rise. In 411, the Luvarians sacked Fatkurith, a crucial blow to the kingdom. Despite the chaos, King Valia Bashir, the last king of the Kre'esh kingdom, launched a desperate counteroffensive against the Luvarians in 414. He achieved a significant victory in 415 at the Battle of Valir, named after himself. However, it was in that same year that an assassination attempt left Valia Bashir severely injured, forcing him to go home. Seizing the moment, the enraged Luvarian Grand Prince Kre'esh II launched an invasion of Mashka in 417. Valia Bashir could only watch as the Luvarians would ravage the Kre'esh's countryside before going on to pillage and slaughter the populations of Korhorhith and Fatkerith, though the cities managed to remain intact. In the same year, the Luvarians moved south and would conquer the Sorobawi kingdom as well, bringing the Kre'esh kingdom's history to an end. However dead the Kre'esh kingdom might be, however, there still lived the prince of the Yavnomen dynasty, whose name was Tarvarev, who managed to escape. With millions following him, he crossed the Isnir River and would go on to found a kingdom that would outlast the Luvarians. His story will be covered in a future video. I hope each and every one of you liked this video. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, and hopefully comment down on what you thought. I hope that each and every one of you has a good day or night, and I'll see you all another time.